So, has anyone factored in that when you mix sanctions with corporate cancel culture, that that could ultimately lead us to a nuclear war? And this is something we got to talk about, and it's something we got to think about because you have the government and NATO, everyone's getting together and they're doing very calculated sanctions, trying to hurt Russia as much as possible without completely pissing them off. I mean, Putin already said if you pull us from SWIFT, they're going to figure that as an act of war. And I think that's why we left some banks could still do SWIFT. You're trying to make it inconvenient for Russia to live. You don't want to completely decimate them. Here's why. Does he seem like the type of dude that you want to back into the corner and say, you ain't got nothing left? So you got nothing to lose. And he's sitting over here with 5,000 nuclear weapons. So, whether it's the West or NATO as a whole, everyone's sitting back and saying, we got to pull SWIFT all the way. We got to cut off all the oil. And this is a very delicate situation because we're trying to avoid a nuclear war where we know it's going to be the end of times. If we let the people on, blogs and Twitter dictate how we negotiate this, we would probably already be bombing each other. You got to step back and say, they didn't fully pull SWIFT for a reason. There's many things that are going on for reasons that I think a lot of people don't understand. Do not back this guy into a corner. We've always tried to avoid going to war directly with another nuclear power. And the last thing you want to do, you got a guy that doesn't back down, has something to prove, that has the most nuclear weapons on the planet, and he's like the honey badger, and he doesn't give a fork. If you haven't figured that out by now. People actually at one point thought he wasn't going to do this invasion, even though he's done invasions in 2008 and 2014. Here we are. He doesn't bluff. Do you want to back this guy into a corner right now? My bigger issue is the government knows what they're doing with their sanctions, but now corporations are getting involved. We're not going to sell products there. We're shutting down stores over there. We're not going to ship them electronics anymore. And then you look at, they're going after the oligarch's yachts. The guy is now selling his football club. I mean, to be a professional sports team owner is like being knighted in this world. There's so much pressure on these people. They're now selling their football clubs. At some point, it takes a toll where Russia has nothing left. They turn into North Korea. They're not going to let that happen. And I don't know why people haven't figured that out yet. They're not going to go back 200 years in time when they got the bombs like that. And this is where you have people outside of the government kind of sticking their nose in business. And you have to say, well, it sounds like a good thing, right? Everyone's like, punish them as much as possible. But is it a point when it goes too far and this guy just starts firing off nuclear bombs? Because if they think there's nothing left, if their country's destroyed, then why not? They seem like the kind of people that's going to take everybody with them. If they're going down with the sinking ship, so are you. So you seen this. If you look at political strategists, they talked about back when the Tea Party was going on. And you kind of had these people that weren't really elected officials pushing this narrative, and it caused a lot of harm to the Republicans. And there's nothing they could do about it. They're like this cluster of individuals that were pushing this thing. And then I just saw on CNN, there's another strategist on talking about something as similar as happening to the Democrats right now, where you have a lot of like non-elected officials not really associated with the party, but they're for the party, but the things they're doing is hurting the party. Like you've seen it happen with the Tea Party, you've seen it happening right now with some of the Democrats, and it's these external forces that no one can control, but end up having a very negative effect towards the desired outcome. That's kind of how I see what's going on with the global council culture right now, and I understand it seems like it makes a lot of sense to just completely take everything away from Russia, right? It's like for what they've done, take it all away. But somewhere in some room in Washington, They are very strategically figuring out what they should and shouldn't sanction to keep us from going to nuclear war. Now we're combining in all this kind of corporate cancel culture. You're going to leave them with nothing. Their currency's crushed. They're not going to be able to get any products. People are fleeing. If it gets to the point to where it's nothing, this guy's not going to care anymore, right? If you completely destroy them and the people, why would he not want to drag NATO into the war, which is another episode? The next goal is going to be, well, screw it. If we got nothing, you're going to have nothing. And, plus you got all these people feeding weapons and money to Ukraine. I don't know how this ends well. But if we've taken away any way of living a decent life in Russia, he's going to drag NATO into this war. And then it's going to get really messy. And then who knows what China's doing? You think it's a coincidence, by the way, that North Korea has fired off the most missiles in a month in January, and they continue to fire off missiles? I don't think this is a coincidence, right? You got 3 or 4 other actors in this party that we don't know what their role is yet. But sometimes it's like, well, if someone's going to completely pull their products out of Russia, maybe they should talk to someone in the government and say, hey, do you think we should do this? And maybe they did do that. Maybe NATO or our government saying, yeah, pull all your stuff out. I just think that the last thing I want to do is put this guy in a position where he's got nothing to lose, or he feels like the people of his country have nothing to lose anymore. They have nothing. What does it matter? Start firing off nuclear bombs. Let's go. I'm going to drag the whole goddamn world into it. And you feel like almost the stuff that's going on with the corporate cancel culture is almost as bad as the sanctions. They're not going to be able to get anything. Are they going to be able to get iPhones anymore? Are they going to be able to get certain retail things? Like now, their currency's crushed. You look around and there's so much piling on. Like if someone in Russia feels like they can never go anywhere again, screw it. I want to start pushing that red button, right? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's possible to go too far with sanctions and the corporate cancel culture, knowing that, add in the no-fly zones and all the other stuff that's going on, knowing that this guy's sitting on 5,000 nuclear weapons? If you're in Europe right now, how do you feel about that? And obviously, even in the United States, we got to worry about that. But if you look at Europe, short missile hop over for something really bad to happen. This is like one of these very delicate times where it's like you gotta inflict the punishment and slow them down, but you can't do it at the cost of a nuclear war either. And the government's in control of what they can do on sanctions, right? But then we got everyone else getting involved. The question is, should they? And if they should, to what extent? So anyways, I'm sitting there thinking I don't want to go to nuclear war because, Russia can't get iPhones anymore. Things that we got to sit around and worry about, unfortunately. But what are your thoughts? Drop a comment below. I'd be curious to hear.